Hey folks, I'm JC from One Shot Adventures, and today I'm going to be smashing together two of my favorite genres, horror and pulp action, with a full review of the 1930s adventure Three Kings. This adventure takes the PCs deep into the heart of occupied Czechoslovakia on the eve of World War II. Dropped behind enemy lines, the PCs must brave Nazi soldiers. Of course, it's a pulp adventure, but also suspicious rebels and the evil machinations of a doctor who is experimenting on things he shouldn't be. Three Kings is an adventure for Achtung Cthulhu, but if you've never heard of that system or haven't played it, stay tuned because it still might be relevant to you. And that's because Modiphius's game system and setting, which combines World War II action with Lovecraftian horror, well, today it's its own game system, but that wasn't always the case. It started out really as a setting for almost every RPG. Achtung Cthulhu saw releases in Fate and Savage Worlds and Call of Cthulhu and Trail of Cthulhu, and then it finally evolved to the current version, which uses the 2D20 rule set that's also seen in Star Trek Adventures, Conan, and the Dune RPG. So Achtung Cthulhu can be pretty confusing, especially if you go back several years. But many of its adventures are worth playing if you love pulp and you love horror. This is a setting where your heroes are well-trained, well-armed, but are still up against incredible odds as they deal with elder gods, monsters, and of course, the mighty German war machine. So, is Three Kings a good introductory adventure into this world? Does it combine Lovecraft and World War II in an interesting way, or is it just a typical run-and-gun monster hunt? Well, grab your parachute and Thompson submachine guns, because not only am I going to give you a full review of Three Kings, I'll teach you GMs how to run this adventure like a pro. But beware, there are Cthulhu-sized spoilers ahead, so if you're thinking about playing this adventure, just stay in your foxhole and read a good book instead. All right, here we go. Three Kings is written by Sarah Newton. It's the first adventure in the 0 Point Adventure series, which are three loosely linked adventures. It's meant to be a good introduction to the Achtung Cthulhu setting. It's about 40 pages, including lots of gorgeous handouts, maps, and it also contains 4 pre-generated characters as well as a page or so of new rules applicable to this adventure. And even though that all sounds like a very long adventure at over 40 pages, it's actually designed to be run in 1 or 2 sessions. I finished it in a single 4-hour session, and I've seen this adventure run at conventions in a single slot, but because it's a sandbox, probably assume it'll take 2 sessions for most groups. Like I said at the top, the Achtung Cthulhu setting has been attached to many, many game systems over the years. Three Kings came out in 2012. Which means that there are versions for Savage Worlds, Trail of Cthulhu, PDQ, which I've never heard of before, and Call of Cthulhu, which is actually the version that's hard to find now, probably due to licensing issues. I don't know. I bought the Savage Worlds version, but to confuse matters more, I actually ran it using GURPS. I think GURPS does a great job with military action and horror, and I like that its heroic realism really forces players to be careful and tactical. No one's surviving a Tommy gun burst in GURPS. Survive a Tommy gun? Haha, I got full hit points. I find that a feature in an adventure like this, but the main point here is that Three Kings is easy to port to whatever your favorite system is, and you can easily dial it from a more realistic sort of military adventure to something very pulpy, just all based on your preference. But for you GURPS GMs out there, you can find my converted characters in the link in the description below, along with VTT tokens and maps that I used. The setup of the adventure is this. It's 1939, and Hitler has made his first moves. Poland has fallen, and Czechoslovakia has been occupied and split into 2 countries. But the full war hasn't broken out yet. The British government's MI6 division has gotten word that there are atrocities going on near Castle Karlstein in Czechoslovakia, and that a priest, codenamed Angel, is hiding children from the Germans and likely has evidence of those atrocities. The British want to find out more, so they assemble a group of experts to parachute into the remote region around Karlstein Castle. The PCs actually have two objectives here, although this is a little fuzzy in the adventure, so GMs need to be clear on this up front. The PCs have to contact the Czech resistance, led by three men nicknamed the Three Kings, to get more information on German military activity around the castle. They also have to contact Father Cerny, the angel, who can likely provide evidence of those German atrocities that the British can use for propaganda purposes. Then they have to escape with all that information. And if they get captured, well, they're given cyanide pills that will, of course, prevent that, because the Germans will execute them as spies if they're ever captured. It's a solid setup. It instantly communicates the danger of this setting to the PCs, and I like that the PCs are given two objectives that are sort of ambiguously intertwined with each other. Which one to do first is a question most groups will ask. I'll warn GMs that the mission brief handout, though beautiful, is quite long at 4 pages, so maybe send that to your players ahead of the game, just in case they're slow readers. The pre-generated characters in the adventure are a good mix. There's an unlikely American professor who's put in charge of the group. He's an expert in the occult. There's a half-Czech intelligence specialist woman who knows the region well, a rough-and-tumble British army sergeant, and a cocky corporal who's a bit of a rebel but good with tools and machines. As a heads up, there are only 4 characters provided, so if you have a 5th player, like I know a lot of groups do, you'll have to create a new one to join the group. These characters are loaded, by the way, with supplies too. They have submachine guns, pistols, first aid kits, toolkits, grenades, rations. Your players will absolutely feel well prepared for this mission, which is cool, and a huge difference between this adventure and, say, a typical Call of Cthulhu adventure, where PCs are lucky to start with anything more useful than an old journal and a lighter. I don't understand. What's wrong with a light and a little journal? I'm only spending 1 night in Innsmouth. I did think it was a little weird that the PCs aren't given any equipment to capture evidence of those atrocities, so I also gave them a camera. The adventure takes place across a small 3-mile region, dotted with a few villages, farms, and Castle Karlstein at its center. The players parachute in at night, which is always a great opening sequence in an adventure, and so they have to pick the spot where they land. So right away, this is a very open-ended adventure. Do they land near where the village where the priest is from? Or do they land near the larger town? Or maybe somewhere more rural and remote? It's a tough choice for the players right from the get-go. But this setup also means that GMs have to be prepared for whatever choices the PCs make. Because a lot in this adventure is left up to the GM, especially the order in which events happen. For example, Father Cerny the Angel doesn't have a set location in the adventure. It just says he's in hiding somewhere near the castle. Neither do the 3 kings, the rebels. In fact, they're probably spread out themselves, and some of them may not even be anywhere near the adventure. The resistance is very secretive, and it's suspicious of outsiders, and it's not centralized at all. It's just spread out across the region. So this setup is both good and bad. It gives the GM a ton of flexibility, and it lets players feel like their choices really matter. But the GM has to have some clue on where these key NPCs might be before the adventure starts, or at least make notes to figure it out as the players go. But regardless of where the PCs land, they'll come across a German patrol who has rounded up some suspected resistance members. This could take place almost anywhere on the map, at a farm, or maybe on the outskirts of a town. This is a strong opener because it gives the PCs a chance to hear the Germans interrogating some scared villagers, and it gives them a chance to rescue them and an opportunity to start building trust with the locals. I actually recommend that these rescued villagers at the beginning are not part of the resistance, because that makes it too easy to rescue resistance members right away. It will make the players feel like their choices actually matter less. Instead, what you do is you say these villagers think they kind of know where the resistance is hiding, maybe in a nearby village, and their clues will be very vague because they don't want to accidentally betray the resistance by sending the PCs who they don't trust right in the midst. So have the villagers say something like, well, There's a small grocery store in Blyken, the village, which has a telephone, which is often used by men from across the region. Just give a hint here, a start to the journey to find the rebels and the priest. Don't give the PCs the answer right away. And the same thing is true of Father Cerny himself. All the villagers have heard of him, but they're actually a little suspicious of him because his activities are getting bolder and he's now angering the Germans with his rescues of children. So they don't really know where he is, and they're not too interested in finding this guy in case the Germans are following them. So in my version of this adventure, Father Cerny's hiding out in a small hunting cabin in the wilderness, but only a very few resistance leaders know that. So as the PCs make contacts in the region, they're going to have to use good role-playing and social skills to make contact and build trust with the resistance. And I'll also add, always have Germans nearby during these segments. Gestapo agents should be sitting in cars, watching suspected resistance members. Patrols in half-tracks and trucks are rolling through randomly. Just really play up the danger here. The objectives of the players is clear. They have to make friends with the resistance, but make that a little bit hard with the constant observation of the Germans so that they feel like one wrong move or talking to somebody in one wrong location can end up with a squad of soldiers immediately on their trail. Have those Gestapo agents question the PCs on site. After all, they're outsiders. Have the troops demand IDs, make the PCs worried about every move they make, and the tension in this adventure will be fantastic. But if you forget those elements, if you make it too easy to find the resistance or you don't use the Germans, the lack of pressure will just make this adventure feel a little bit more like a breadcrumb hunt than something as tense as it was meant to be. Eventually, though, the PCs will find Father Cerny, and this is sort of the midpoint of the adventure. He's been in and out of Castle Karlstein several times, and he's witnessed terrible things. Dr. von Kammerstein, a German scientist, runs the castle, and he is performing horrible experiments on local adults and children. The doctors discovered an evil book, the Book of Shadows, which contains rituals for raising the dead. And he hopes to create super soldiers that can be brought back to life again and again and again. So far, the Doctor has only created an inferior form of zombie, the Ungeziefer, I totally mispronounced that, apologies to my German friends, or the vermin zombie, which so far are pretty useless. So the Doctors continue to work on his experiment and kidnapping more and more children and adults. Father Cerny has been losing his sanity from these discoveries, and he's now become obsessed over rescuing the children and has been growing bolder and bolder. In fact, on his last expedition to the castle, he stole the Book of Shadows from the Doctor, and he's been studying it. The priest discovered another ritual in the book that will supposedly bring an angel of death upon the Nazis, but the priest is not quite right about this. It's actually a spell he's discovered, one that will summon a Shoggoth. And those of you who know Lovecraft know that Shoggoths are bad news. They're interdimensional, nearly indestructible blob things from Lovecraft lore. And if he summons one, well, it's not just the Nazis that will be having problems. Shoggoths can easily wipe out the countryside. Father Cerny, when the PCs meet him, of course, will keep his plans and occult knowledge pretty secret, but he clearly will tell the PCs that he wants to mount another rescue mission with the PCs' help. And who can say no to rescuing children from an evil German castle?
Hang on, did you just say there's kids in that Nazi castle? Well, let's come up with a plan already.
Now, as a GM, you're gonna have to roleplay Father Cerny just right. You want the PCs to trust this man, but to think that he's a little obsessed and maybe a little bit off his rocker. But if you overdo it and the PCs find out too soon that this guy's been delving into dark magic and has a book to summon Shoggoths, well, they'll sideline him very fast, which takes away from some of the fun that this character offers, as well as a twist that comes up later in the adventure that I'll talk about. So play Father Cerny as sort of a Van Helsing type, a little crazy and obsessed, but ultimately feels like he's on the side of good. The castle seems well guarded, but once the PCs meet the Father Cerny, he'll reveal his secret. He's close with a woman inside the castle, a woman named Helena Svobodova, who's sort of an inside agent, and she lets him in and out through the castle from an unused entrance. You have to also play up that the PCs really need help from the three kings, the rebels around their area, to pull enough soldiers away from the castle when they finally go to it, so that the PCs will logically be able to get in. Because there's over 100 soldiers inside Castle Karlstein, so the PCs need a distraction to pull off that rescue and capture evidence of the atrocities that are in there. Whoa, guys, I know we're talking the full frontal assault on the Nazi castle with 100 Germans, a few SS, machine guns, half-tracks, or just saying we could go get the partisans to cause a distraction, right? Right? Isn't that what they're there for? After the Sandbox exploration of the region, the adventure culminates in a special ops raid on the castle. The PCs have to get in, sneak around the SS troops guarding the place, and make their way to the Great Tower, which is where Dr. von Kammerstein performs his experiments. This is actually also a very open-ended part of the adventure, so you have to create exciting moments for the PCs, like sneaking across the castle courtyard, making their way across the bridge that connects one part of the castle to the Great Tower, and venturing into the labs of the evil doctor. There's a map of the castle as a whole, but it's pretty big. I wish there were a little bit more individual maps of the areas, but like I said, you can grab some of mine from the description if you want. I do think you have to be careful here not to turn the entire castle sequence into a long string of combat encounters. I let my players easily sneak into the heart of the castle, which made sense since not only did they have a spy to kind of guide them in, but they had arranged for the resistance to launch a feint attack at the same time, so a lot of the soldiers there were distracted. But then once they got to the middle, I hit them with just a couple of firefights with the castle's SS unit as they crossed that bridge towards the main tower. This felt right. They were inside the castle, but they just had to push a little bit harder to get to the center. The twist at the end of the adventure is that midway through this castle raid, Father Cerny just rushes off randomly into the corner of the castle to start performing his ritual to summon the Angel of Death, also known as the Shoggoth. This is fun. Have Father Cerny just kind of run off just at the wrong moment and give the PCs a choice of whether to follow him to see what he's up to or continuing on their rescue mission. I timed his escape just when the PCs were trying to cross that tower bridge, sniping some SS guards carefully, and then suddenly he's running off, and my players chose not to chase him because they were dealing with the Nazis, which was a big mistake, as you'll find out in a few minutes. Once the PCs get in the heart of the castle, defeating Dr. von Kammerstein actually isn't too difficult. He doesn't have any special powers or anything, just some really good SS troops guarding his work. But he can unleash his zombies from their cells to cause a distraction. The zombies, which is actually kind of fun, they're not necessarily attack dogs. They really are kind of useless on their own. They're not powerful. They don't viciously attack people, but they do follow orders of the doctor vaguely, and they'll defend themselves. So smart players who could easily and quickly kill von Kammerstein can actually avoid having a castle full of vicious zombies. My players used great tactics once they were in the castle. They took out some of the key Nazi forces, sniped the doctor, grenaded some zombies, rescued some kids, and got out pretty quickly. But if Father Cerny has escaped and performed his ritual, which takes a little while, he does successfully summon a Shoggoth into the castle courtyard, and all hell breaks loose. Shoggoths, regardless of the game system that you're using, are insanely hard to kill, and they're horrifying enough to cause sanity-blasting fright checks to anyone who sees them, and they dissolve anything in their path. So if this happens, the entire countryside is in danger, and many, many people, both Germans and innocents, are going to end up dead. The adventure implies that you could have an entire section devoted to the PCs teaming up with the Germans to kill the Shoggoth, but I don't think you should bother. Funny enough, I have a video I did a little while ago that actually proves what would happen in different game systems if the PCs tried to take on a Shoggoth. But here, if you think about this, the Germans have heavy equipment that they can roll in, heavy machine guns, half-tracks, tanks, bombers, etc. The PCs don't really have anything to offer here, and the Germans should logically capture and execute the PCs since they started this whole thing, and now they have evidence of the super soldier program. I just don't see a scenario where the PCs can walk up to Germans and convince them to help fight the Shoggoth. Hey yo, Hans and Franz, I know we were the ones that released the Shoggoth into your courtyard, but we can help. I'm an American, I got a gun, I got a light, I got a knife. What do you say? So, if the Shoggoth is summoned, I suggest you use it as a tool to get the PCs to make a fast escape out of the castle and the region, and then wrap up the adventure by describing the destruction caused to the countryside. When I ran it, one of my brave players actually gave his life to buy the others a little bit more time, long enough to load the children they rescued onto a German truck and escape the castle. He was dissolved, but managed to buy them a few more precious seconds. It's actually a pretty epic ending.
This is a terrible way to die!
And if the PCs can survive the castle and escape with the evidence of the atrocities, well, that's the end of Three Kings. So what do I think? I think this adventure does a really great job combining military action with horror. If you walk into this adventure expecting an equal mix of combat scenes, investigation, and terror, you'll be pleased. It's certainly more pulp than slow burn investigation, but I think the fuel mix works well here. And despite its action focus compared to most horror adventures, I really like that the PCs have to use tactics and cleverness to proceed. Running and gunning just won't work without a plan. And the NPCs are super interesting to play, from Father Cerny, the spy inside the castle, the suspicious resistance leaders who are going to be very, very hesitant to work with outsiders. There's just lots of room for the GM to roleplay and also add locals to fill out the cast as needed. The Nazi bad guys are pretty two-dimensional and up to very classic pulp evil deeds, but it works well enough here. Like I said at the beginning, the only real weakness of this adventure is that GMs have to set the table before they run Three Kings. You really have to have a vague idea where the priest is hiding, what the resistance looks like in each village, and how to handle it when the PCs inevitably catch the attention of the Germans in the region. You can't just let mistakes slide in this adventure. If the PCs get into a firefight in a village with the Germans, you need to roll in a half-track of troops a few hours later to keep the PCs on the move. Otherwise, the unique tension of this adventure will be lost a bit. I also want to add that I really respect that the author included so much historical authenticity to this adventure. Castle Karlstein is real. The Three Kings were real resistance leaders. The equipment is all period accurate. It's very well researched. And it's a gorgeous book too, with detailed maps, period handouts, and really great art. Overall, great production on this adventure. So if you're looking for an adventure that's fun to run and play and maybe a little bit different from your typical Call of Cthulhu horror adventure, check this one out. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more reviews like it, hit that like and subscribe and bell buttons. And if you've played or run in this adventure, I'd love to hear your war stories. Let me know in the comments below. But until next time, I'm JC, and just remember, if an obsessed priest is carrying around an old black book, don't assume it's the Bible. Just grab it from him and check it out.